Hello, I'm Donald Standeford. Please like, rumble, subscribe, follow, whatever is good for you. People, we have a real split in our nation. The right is now being punished. The wrong is rewarded. That seems off, but a lot of people don't seem to care. It shouldn't be that way. Churches are being set on fire in Canada and burnt to the ground. In France, hundreds of thousands of protesters crowd into the streets, yet our television news, quote-unquote news, plays it down as if it were only thousands. They're fighting for their right to not have to carry proof of their vaccination. It's not that they mind carrying proof, it's that they know what this is going to lead to. First, you have to carry proof for your vaccination. Then you have to carry proof that you are of a certain nationality, or that you are cleared to go ahead from state to state instead of automatically just being able to go. But it's more than just fighting the vaccination papers, and that's just a start. The lockdowns are just a start. The abuse of the whites in the America and the Christians who are being falsely accused, and blacks too, Latinos, those being falsely accused, called white supremacists, falsely charged for the false flag January 6th, quote-unquote armed insurrection, where no guns were found. Trump, the MAGA crowd, were on film inviting people into the Capitol. Not Trump, but the police, the Capitol Police, which, by the way, Nancy wants to extend to California and Florida. She wants Capitol Police. You know, it's called the DC Capitol Police, and she wants DC Capitol Police all over the nation. I guess she can't be president, so why not make herself as powerful as president? So that armed insurrection where there were no guns found, Capitol Police inviting the MAGA crowd into the Capitol as if they were tourists, even taking selfies with them, talking to them casually. Yet Joe Biden, well, I'm talking about the Joe Biden who slipped his used mask into a little boy's hand the other day after calling everybody and their brother super spreaders. I guess he thought the kid would. I don't know. Joe Biden had the nerve to say that the January 6th white supremacist armed insurrection, where the only one killed was an unarmed woman protester, upset at losing her small business from the forced lockdowns, which didn't apply to the bigger business. And despite all her service in the Air Force, she was mistreated and murdered. In 9/11, there were 2,996 Americans killed. Is 9/11 an attack on the democracy? Because Biden said this is the worst attack on democracy since the Civil War. Well, in World War II, if you can call that an attack on, democracy, there were a total of 70 million people killed. Now, if you go back to World War I, which is between where we are now and the Civil War, there were 11 million soldiers and 7 million civilians killed. And Biden says this is the worst attack in democracy since Civil War. Yet only one person died, and it was one of the attackers, supposedly. Then the changes the GOP made to the voting laws. According to Biden, these changes, which basically said you couldn't bring food to a voter standing in line and then, slip them a little pamphlet, say, vote Democrat or whatever, and that you have to have ID to vote. Now, in Biden's opinion, this requirement to carry ID is not only Jim Crow on steroids, but it's a worse threat to democracy than the Civil War. What? By the way, almost 1 million Americans died in the Civil War. 1 American died on January 6th. It was just some Air Force person who lost their business because she was forced to lock down. Then she lost her life. In the Civil War, the suffering in all these wars was excruciating. Legs cut off by cannonballs in the Civil War. Arms cut off from wounds infected. Countless sacrifices were made to preserve the unity of America and bring our brothers and sisters out of slavery. But having to get ID to vote is a worse attack on our democracy than the Civil War? Biden graduated law school. Barely. Well, though he proclaimed himself a genius. But somewhere along the way, he must have had an American history course. The other day in Portland, Oregon, the police watched while a black-clad, hooded, unrecognizable. That sounds familiar. Black instead of white, though. Antifa soldiers. Seen it myself. They attacked a group of assembling Christians in a park. They threw stun grenades into the crowd of women and children, including a 3-month-old baby. They turned over a few items on the stage they were setting up, and then they left. Police standing right there, watching the whole thing. Didn't do anything. See, that's why they wanted the police defunded, so they could replace it with their own police. Not ones to protect you from danger, but to protect them from you once you figure out what they're after. There is a significant threat to our democracy. It's Joe Biden. The people have paid him a wage and elevated him from senator to vice president to presidential candidate. And now, I don't know what he is, but they let him in D.C. and they let him sign stuff. Then the election. Oh, it's the most scrutinized and perfectly fair election in American history. When people start talking like that, you know something's wrong. Yet Arizona, to do a simple forensic audit, had to fight 73 Democrat lawyers that made it their one job to find every reason possible to delay or stop the forensic audit. They couldn't stop it, people. Now Georgia is revealing a ballot pool that the more you dig into Georgia's ballots to check the validity of America's most perfect audit, the more the green swamp slime comes up with your hand, and it stinks. It sits in your hand and stinks. All those election corruption. In Pennsylvania, like 20 other states, they sat silently to see how the Arizona Maricopa audit, the America's audit, was going to turn out. Evidently, it didn't turn out too good, because citizens in states all over America are now, because of the slime dug up from the most perfect election in American history, demanded forensic audits. Pennsylvania is fighting the resistance to get their audit, and not just any audit, not just the audit that the election officials say they did and didn't really do, or they count votes that are obviously counterfeit or dead people or whatever. No, a forensic audit they're fighting for. Everybody who wants a forensic audit now. Wisconsin, well, since Arizona got their audit done, for some reason Wisconsin was already doing one and they added a second one. They're rising up. 2 simultaneous forensic audits. They want to get down to the bottom of what happened. Even Michigan is crumbling. Washington even is talking about auditing. Trump states like Texas, Florida, Oklahoma, they are demanding audits despite that Trump won there by big margins. It's more true to say that, as many witnesses from around the nation have said, the Arizona audit was the most perfect audit in American history. They had like 10 cameras on it all the time, plus another few cameras that they wouldn't. You know, the 10 cameras they were showing on the internet, you could see at any time just by going on the website. It was one of the most safe audits there was. There weren't people filming themselves, ripping up Trump ballots in the closet, kicking poll observers out, and taping pizza boxes over the windows so no one could see what they were up to. Well, there was no leasing of huge arenas using Zuckerbucks so poll observers could be placed 60 feet from the counting room. As the law said, poll watchers have to be in the same room as the counters. They gave them binoculars, which didn't help. Oh, for the Arizona audit, they did have to rent an arena, but that was only because the Maricopa election officials wouldn't let them count them where they were. They had to deliver them to an arena they had to pay for. Make it as hard as possible. Then they complained about all the money. Even through the binoculars they were given, they could not see the counters. Georgia ballot counters sent poll watchers home. They waited for them to leave and then reached under the cloth-covered tables and pulled out box after box of pre-filled ballots. Election officials were shown the videos in the morning. One lady said, "I think that video was already debunked." Well, comes the lady reply, it was only been out since late last night. Nobody's had time to debunk it. It's already been debunked. Debunked. These woke leftists like to debunk everything. They're like the king with his scepter. Debunk. They toss the word debunk around as if it meant nothing. Well, yes, it does. It does mean they are afraid of the process of oral argument and civil debate. Debunked. The word resounds throughout the halls of oratory and debate. It rings with resonations of Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, Nietzsche, and all the classic literature from ancient Greece to the Victorian age, even to the 20th century novels and plays. Debunked. Ah, the sound it's nothing like it. No debate. You never lose. You're always backed up by the fiction writers, the propagandists working to steer this country into slavery under the same tyrants that make us faceless and afraid, with masks and 6-foot distancing rules and mandatory vaccines given even to kids who have no vulnerability to COVID but have much risk to the vaccine. By the way, the counters who pulled ballots out from under a cloth-covered table also scanned, in plain sight on camera, some of these ballots multiple times. Still, their bosses excused them. Debunked. This is common, ordinary practice, Georgia elections, because this was the most secure election in American history. What about the giant surge in Biden votes at that same time that they pulled the votes out from under the table and started counting? Well, it was about 90% for Biden and the rest for Trump. Oh, that's debunked. Why? I don't know, just debunked. We should rejoice at the 2020 election. More people turned out for this election than any election in American history. Yeah, a lot of dead people. People moved out of state, whatever. Oh, I wished I had a debunked stamp. I don't mind the corruption as much as I mind the reason for the corruption. I've seen this before. says a frantic immigrant from Venezuela. They stopped counting in the middle of the night, losing, and the next morning the communists are ahead. I came from America to be free. Now it's happening again to me here in the land of the free. We have only one chance to make it right, folks. We need to take it.